The room went still the moment the cup tilted. Cold water splashed over his head, dripping down his collar, soaking his work shirt. Laughter erupted around him like applause. The man in the suit, Daniel Moore, site manager, grinned wide as if humiliation was entertainment. "This is what people like you deserve, you filthy bricklayer," he said, his voice echoing against the glass walls of the construction firm's headquarters. Phones were out. Some were filming, some pretending not to. The young man at the center didn't move. Not a blink, not a word. His name was Jamal Carter, 24, engineering graduate, son of the man who owned the entire company. But today, he wasn't here as a CEO's son. He was here undercover to see how his father's employees treated the people they thought were beneath them. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now back to Jamal. He stood drenched but silent, the water pooling around his boots, the weight of it pressing down on him like years of memory. Daniel smirked, shaking the cup like he'd just won something. "Cat got your tongue? Or can't construction boys speak in boardrooms?" A ripple of laughter followed. Near the corner, a young intern hesitated, eyes darting between her phone and Jamal's calm face. She knew something was wrong, but fear kept her quiet. Jamal's eyes lifted steady, direct, not angry, just tired. He'd seen this before. When he was 16, working summer shifts on one of his father's project sites, a foreman once told him to leave the real work to the men who belong here. That night, Jamal promised himself he'd never let silence be mistaken for weakness again. Daniel leaned closer, his breath thick with arrogance. "What? Nothing to say?" Jamal replied softly. "You'll wish I had." The laughter faded. One of the executives snorted nervously. "This guy's got an attitude." Daniel waved him off. "Nah, he's just another broke dreamer thinking sweat earns him respect." But Jamal didn't hear him. He was counting seconds, watching, remembering every face, every laugh, every phone held up for likes. Across the room, the project director, a tall woman in a gray suit, watched with amusement. "He'll quit before lunch," she whispered to her assistant. "They always do." But Jamal wasn't going anywhere. He straightened, wiped the water from his eyes, and said quietly, "Keep filming. You'll want proof of what happens next." The tone wasn't threat, it was prophecy. Daniel scoffed, "Oh, we're terrified." But behind him, one junior engineer lowered his phone, guilt flashing across his face. Something in Jamal's composure unsettled him. The rest didn't notice. The laughter returned, hollow now, forced. The air smelled of steel, coffee, and power abused. And in the middle of it all stood Jamal, soaked, calm, and silent as a storm that hasn't yet started. What they didn't know was that by noon, none of them would be working there anymore. Daniel tossed the empty cup aside like it was a trophy. Water dripped from Jamal's hair onto the polished marble floor, the sound faint but sharp enough to slice through the silence that followed. "Clean that up before the board arrives," Daniel barked, wiping his hands on his suit jacket. The other employees chuckled nervously, unsure whether to join in or step away. Jamal did not move. His hands stayed at his sides, steady, grounded. Behind him, one of the engineers whispered, "Why does he just stand there?" Another replied under his breath, "Because he knows he is lucky to have a job." They all assumed they were safe behind their laughter. They were not. 10 feet away, in the corner of the office, a digital wall clock read 10:02 a.m. Jamal noted the time. His father's board meeting was scheduled for noon, 2 hours. That was all he needed. Daniel paced the floor like a man rehearsing his authority. "You people think you can just walk into this company and make demands. You build walls, but we build the future." The irony made Jamal's jaw tighten. He had literally built the future skyscrapers, hospitals, schools. His designs were on half the blueprints in the room, but none of them knew. He had submitted them anonymously through the junior engineer program his father had created to test merit without identity bias. The same team that mocked him now had benefited from his designs. He watched Daniel lean against the conference table, smirking, "I bet you do not even know how to read the safety manual." A few laughed again. One woman, the intern from earlier, flinched. She whispered, "That is not right." Her colleague hushed her quickly. "Stay quiet, Lily. Do not get involved." But Lily's eyes stayed fixed on Jamal, who finally spoke for the first time since the humiliation began. His voice was calm, measured, like steel held under control. When you pour water on someone, you see their reflection, not their worth. The room went quiet. Daniel frowned. "What is that supposed to mean?" Jamal looked him straight in the eyes. "It means you will understand soon." Daniel scoffed, shaking his head. "Save your philosophy for the union hall." He turned to the group. "All right, everyone, back to work. This little show is over. But it was not. Jamal bent down, picked up the same cup that had been used to humiliate him, and set it gently on the table. "You might want to keep this," he said softly. "It is evidence." The words lingered like smoke. Daniel blinked, uncertain. "Evidence? Of what?" Jamal replied. "Of who you are when you think no one important is watching." His tone did not rise, but the chill behind it made even the laughter stop. Somewhere near the back of the office, a door opened. Mr. Franklin, the regional operations director, stepped in, scanning the scene. He saw the puddle, the silence, the tension. "What is going on here?" Daniel straightened immediately. "Just a training moment, sir. Some of the new workers need discipline." Franklin's brow furrowed. "Discipline? By throwing water on someone?" Daniel hesitated. "It was a misunderstanding." Jamal said nothing, just observed, memorizing every word. Franklin sighed, rubbing his temple. "Get this cleaned up, and Daniel come to my office after this." Daniel forced a smile, but his face had drained of color. As Franklin left, Lily took a small step forward and whispered, "Are you okay?" Jamal nodded once. "I am, but they are not." Then he glanced at the wall clock again, 10:11 a.m. He still had time. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and sent one short message. "Protocol 7. Activate at noon." The screen dimmed, and his expression did not change. Outside, the hum of the city carried on as usual, unaware that inside this office, every career in the room had just started its countdown. The sound of heavy boots echoed through the unfinished lobby as Jamal stepped out onto the construction floor. Concrete dust hung in the air like fog, clinging to his soaked shirt. Workers moved around him, unaware that the young man they thought was just another hire had already set a quiet plan in motion. His phone buzzed once an encrypted confirmation. Protocol 7 was live. In 2 hours, the internal audit system would trigger automatic alerts to his father's executive network, exposing employee misconduct, site violations, and recorded abuse. He had not wanted to use it, but what he witnessed this morning left no doubt. Daniel Moore and his team were not just cruel, they were corrupt. Jamal walked past stacks of steel rods and paused near a window overlooking the skyline. This was one of his father's signature projects, a multi-million-dollar corporate headquarters set to open in 6 months. He remembered standing in this same spot a year ago during a private tour with his father. One day, his father had said, "You will learn more from how people treat the invisible than from any business class." Jamal finally understood. Behind him, voices grew louder. Daniel's laugh carried through the space as he bragged to 2 foremen. "You should have seen the look on that guy's face. Maybe next time he will think twice before talking back to management." One foreman chuckled. "You sure he is not going to report it?" Daniel scoffed. "He is a temp. Who is going to believe a construction worker over me?" Jamal turned, watching them from the shadows. He noticed Lily again, standing by the supply cart, her hands shaking as she organized blueprints. Their eyes met briefly. She looked terrified, but also determined. A few moments later, Daniel shouted, "Hey, you, brick boy! Bring those forms here." Jamal did not move at first, then slowly walked toward him. "Yes, sir," he said evenly. Daniel smirked, glancing at his co-workers. "Sir, look at that. Maybe he is learning respect." Jamal handed him the clipboard silently. Daniel flipped through the pages, pretending to check numbers. "You know, you have potential," he said mockingly. "If you keep your head down, maybe you will make it past probation." Jamal's calm voice cut through the noise. "Probation? That is funny coming from someone already on theirs." Daniel frowned. "What did you say?" Jamal smiled slightly. "Nothing you would understand yet." He turned away, leaving Daniel blinking in confusion. One of the foremen whispered, "Who does this kid think he is?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "I will find out." He pulled out his phone and called HR. "Yeah, this is Moore. I want the background check on that new guy in engineering support, Jamal something. Run it fast." Meanwhile, Lily quietly walked up beside Jamal as he reviewed plans at a drafting table. "He is going to make trouble for you," she whispered. Jamal replied, "He already has." She hesitated, then said, "I saw what they did upstairs. I can file a report." Jamal shook his head. "Not yet. Let them believe they are untouchable. The system needs to see their truth, not mine." Lily looked at him for a long moment. "You talk like someone who owns the place." Jamal's eyes didn't leave the blueprint. Maybe that is what scares them. At 10:47 a.m., Daniel's phone buzzed. His face went pale as he read an automated message. Asterisk. Notice. Compliance audit scheduled at 12 p.m. All managerial access will be reviewed. Asterisk. He swallowed hard, suddenly uneasy. Around him, the energy on the floor shifted. Workers whispered, sensing something bigger than another morning argument. Jamal folded the blueprint neatly, placed it on the table, and said quietly, "Tick, tick, tick." The countdown had begun. By the time the clock struck 11, the tension in the building had begun to thicken. Conversations dropped into whispers. Even the steady rhythm of drills and saws outside seemed to fade under the weight of what was coming. Daniel Moore's confidence had started to crack. His phone kept buzzing with compliance notifications he could not decipher, and every message carried the same timestamp: noon. He paced across the site floor, barking orders at workers just to feel in control again. "Clean this area up! We have board members touring this place in less than an hour!" But no one moved as quickly as before. The room could feel the shift, the unease. Jamal, standing near the glass wall, looked like a man waiting for a storm he already knew the path of. Lily approached carefully, holding a clipboard. "Daniel is nervous," she said softly. "He is calling everyone he knows, even Har." Jamal replied, "Let him. The truth does not need to rush. It just needs to arrive." Lily hesitated. "Who are you really?" Jamal met her eyes. "Someone giving him a chance to prove who he is before the system does it for him." Before she could respond, Daniel shouted again, "Hey, Carter, get over here!" Jamal turned slowly. Daniel held up his phone. "You think you are clever, do you? I ran your background. You are not even registered in our database. Who are you?" Jamal walked closer, his steps steady, voice calm. "You must have checked the wrong system." Daniel laughed bitterly. "Right. Maybe you are one of those undercover HR tests. Let me guess you think you can trap me," Jamal said. "No, Daniel, you did that yourself." Daniel's jaw flexed. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You are done here. You will not work another minute under my sight. Hand over your badge." Jamal looked at the ID clipped to his vest, then back at Daniel. "You might want to keep that request on record." Daniel frowned. "What?" Jamal's tone sharpened slightly. "Everything you have said to me today is being recorded and backed up by the company's own servers. That badge," he pointed to the one on Daniel's chest, "will deactivate before noon." The words hung there like a spark in dry air. For a moment, Daniel said nothing. Then he laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. "You have lost it, kid." He turned to his team. "He thinks he is some kind of spy." One foreman laughed, another looked uneasy. But then a ping echoed from the security system overhead, followed by a female voice over the loudspeaker. "Attention. Compliance inspection is commencing at 1200 hours. All managers must report to the conference lounge." The entire room froze. Daniel's phone buzzed again, times priority alert. "Your access level will be temporarily suspended pending verification." Asterisk. His throat tightened. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. Jamal checked his watch. 11:32 a.m. "Right on schedule," he said quietly. Daniel turned on him, anger and confusion twisting his face. "Did you do this? Who the hell sent that audit?" Jamal replied evenly, "You did, when you forgot that respect is part of protocol." Lily gasped softly. She was starting to piece it together. The workers exchanged looks, murmuring. Daniel grabbed his radio. "Security, get this guy off site now." But the radio only crackled, no response. Jamal's phone buzzed once more. A text flashed. Asterisk executive team en route. ETA 25 minutes. Asterisk. He slipped the phone back into his pocket without breaking eye contact. Daniel's hand shook as he pointed toward the exit. "Leave, now." Jamal smiled faintly. "I will when the people who deserve to leave go first." Daniel stepped forward, inches from his face. "You think you can threaten me?" Jamal's voice dropped low, steady, final. "No, Daniel. I am just reminding you that walls do not hide truth. They echo it." The floor fell silent again, and for the first time since morning, Daniel looked genuinely afraid. At 11:45 a.m., the office felt like a pressure chamber about to burst. Every sound was amplified: the hum of the air conditioner, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights, the uneven breaths of nervous employees. Daniel Moore stood stiff in the center of the floor, phone clutched in his hand, sweat gathering beneath his collar. The system had locked him out entirely. His email, his badge, even the internal chat app all displayed the same message. Asterisk. Access restricted pending compliance review. Asterisk. He tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out hollow. "Temporary glitch," he muttered, though no one was asking. Jamal remained where he was, calm and deliberate, leaning against the drafting table with quiet authority. Lily watched him from across the room, realization flickering behind her eyes. There was something about the way he carried himself, measured, patient, never begging for dignity. Daniel's voice broke the tension again. Everyone stay where you are. Nobody leaves until I figure this out. He tried to reassert control, but the workers were no longer listening. They whispered to each other, confused and uneasy. One of the foremen, a middle-aged man named Greg, stepped forward cautiously. "Sir, maybe you should call the regional director." Daniel snapped. "I already did, and he is not answering." He turned toward Jamal, eyes narrowing. "You know something. Tell me who you are." Jamal's gaze didn't waver. "Someone who gave you every chance to act with decency." Daniel's face reddened. "You think decency builds companies?" "No, power does. Control does," Jamal replied evenly. "Then let us see who still has either." The main elevator dinged. Heads turned. Out stepped three individuals in dark suits, two men, and a woman wearing the gold identification badges reserved for executive officers. Conversations stopped instantly. The woman spoke first, her tone crisp. "Compliance inspection for Site Division 4. Who is Daniel Moore?" Daniel stepped forward, his confidence returning for a fleeting second. "That would be me. There seems to be some mistake." The man beside her interrupted. "No mistake. We have received multiple reports and internal recordings from this branch. Our system flagged your account for behavioral misconduct, unreported safety violations, and unauthorized personnel harassment." Daniel blinked, his jaw tightening. "This is ridiculous. Who reported this?" Jamal spoke softly. "Your actions did." Daniel turned sharply toward him, realization dawning like a slow storm. "You!" he hissed. "You set this up!" Jamal said nothing. The lead executive gestured to an assistant. "Bring up the internal footage." A tablet was handed over. On the screen, the morning's incident replayed in sharp clarity, Daniel dumping water, employees laughing, Jamal standing still. The room went silent except for the faint audio of Daniel's voice. Asterisk. "This is what people like you deserve." Asterisk. The executives exchanged grim looks. The woman lowered the tablet. "Effective immediately, your access is terminated. You are relieved of all duties pending a formal hearing." Daniel stepped back, pale, shaking his head. Wait, this is not he provoked me. He is just a worker." Jamal finally spoke, calm as ever. "That is what you thought." Daniel glared at him, voice cracking. "Who are you?" Jamal took one slow step forward. "My name is Jamal Carter." The name alone seemed to pull the air from the room. The executives straightened immediately. One of them whispered, "Sir, I did not realize." Jamal raised a hand. "Not yet." His tone was even but final. "Right now, I am still the man you poured water on, and that is the only title that matters." Daniel stared, speechless, as the quiet around him deepened into judgment. The woman in charge turned to her team. "Escort him to security. Lock his credentials permanently." As Daniel was led out, Jamal looked toward the workers, not with anger but with a calm authority that made them stand taller. "The truth always finds its way through the cracks," he said quietly. "Ours just arrived early." The clock struck 12. The reckoning had officially begun. The door shut behind Daniel with a final metallic thud that echoed through the construction site like a verdict. The sound carried through every beam, every glass panel, every unfinished wall, a reminder that power built on arrogance never lasts. Jamal stood still, letting the silence breathe. No one spoke. Even the faint hum of the ventilation seemed hesitant to disturb the moment. The executives remained near the entrance, waiting for instruction. Lily looked at Jamal, eyes wide with disbelief and a flicker of pride. She whispered, "You are really him." Jamal finally turned toward her, calm and composed. "I am still me," he said quietly. "The same person you saw standing there when no one else did." Her lips parted as if to respond, but before she could, the lead compliance officer, the woman with the sharp tone, approached Jamal with respectful precision. "Mr. Carter, your father was informed of the situation. He asked that we extend full discretion and authority to you. You are to conduct this investigation as acting owner's representative." The title hit the room like thunder. Every worker straightened instinctively. Jamal nodded slowly. "Then let us finish what we started." The officers began setting up portable screens and tablets, connecting to the company's secure server. One of them, a younger man named Davis, turned to Jamal. "We have already flagged over 40 incidents linked to this division: unauthorized labor cuts, falsified payroll hours, racial bias complaints buried without review." Jamal's eyes hardened. "Bring them all up." One by one, faces appeared on the monitor: employees who had filed complaints, only to be silenced or reassigned. Lily stepped closer, horrified. "They covered all of this up?" Jamal replied, "No, they normalized it." His tone was low, heavy, with the kind of disappointment that only comes from truth too long ignored. Davis continued, Mr. Carter, there is one more file you need to see. He opened a report titled Times Incident 14, B, Anonymous Worker Retaliation **. Video footage filled the screen. Daniel and his two foremen were laughing in the same office from earlier, mocking a worker who had reported unsafe scaffolding. The video ended with a note. * complaint dismissed by manager Daniel Moore. Worker terminated next day. * Jamal's jaw tightened. Find that worker, he said. Davis nodded immediately. Already contacted. He is coming in now. Within minutes, a man in his 50s wearing a worn reflective vest entered through the service door. His hands were calloused, his expression uncertain. You wanted to see me? Jamal approached him. You are Marcus Lane, correct? The man nodded. Yes, sir. I was fired 2 months ago for speaking up about safety violations. Jamal extended his hand. You were not fired. You were silenced. And that ends today. Marcus looked at him confused. Who are you? Jamal said simply. The owner's son. And the man who just fired your boss. Marcus blinked, then laughed softly in disbelief. You have got to be kidding. Jamal shook his head. Not even a little. The entire room seemed to exhale at once. Lily smiled faintly, the tension in her shoulders finally easing. The compliance officer spoke again. Mr. Carter, with your authorization, we will suspend operations on this site pending a full ethical review. Jamal gave a single nod. Do it. And ensure every employee who was mistreated here gets reinstated with full pay and an apology in writing. Davis confirmed. Consider it done. The energy in the room shifted from fear to relief. Jamal looked around at the faces watching him, workers who had once kept their heads down now daring to lift them. This is not about revenge, he said clearly. It is about respect. We build structures that touch the sky, but we forget the foundation is made of people. As his words settled, the workers began to applaud. Not loud, not chaotic, but steady and sincere. For the first time that day, Jamal allowed himself a quiet breath. Justice had entered the room, and it was not leaving. The applause faded into a heavy silence that carried more weight than noise. The construction floor, moments ago a stage for humiliation, now stood transformed into a place of reckoning. Jamal's phone vibrated once in his pocket. He glanced at the screen and saw a name that made his expression soften. His father, Chairman William Carter. He stepped aside and answered quietly, Yes, sir. His father's voice came through, steady and composed. I have been watching the live compliance feed, Jamal. You handled it with restraint, Jamal replied. I learned from you, but this place needs rebuilding from the inside. His father paused. Do what you must. Remember, dignity does not require volume, only truth. The call ended and Jamal slipped the phone away. He turned to the compliance team. Bring everyone from the adjoining site floor here. No one leaves until we speak openly. Within minutes, workers streamed in, their faces lined with curiosity and caution. Jamal waited until they settled. You all know what happened this morning, he began, voice calm but clear. But this is not just about one man's behavior. It is about every silent moment that allowed it. He looked around, meeting eyes one by one. When someone is mocked or ignored, when their safety is dismissed, and you say nothing, you build walls higher than steel. You build walls between people. The room stayed still. A young worker raised his hand hesitantly. Sir, we were scared. We needed the job. Jamal nodded. I understand. Fear is powerful, but silence feeds it. Today, that ends. You will not lose your job for speaking the truth under this company's name. You will lose it only if you lie. The words landed like a promise and a warning. Lily stepped forward, holding a report. Mr. Carter, there is one more thing. The records show that several minority contractors were deliberately underpaid by Daniel's department. Jamal took the folder and read quickly. His face hardened. How much? Nearly $200,000 across multiple crews, Lily said quietly. Jamal turned to Davis, the compliance officer. Recover every cent. Back pay them with interest and issue formal apologies, and I want their contracts renewed under corporate oversight. Davis typed rapidly. Understood. From the back of the room, Marcus spoke. Nobody ever came back for people like us before. Jamal looked at him, his tone softening. Then maybe today is the first time. He stepped closer to the workers, the same men who hours ago saw him as just another laborer. I came here to see how leadership behaves when no one is watching. What I found was that too many people confuse power with worth, but power does not come from position. It comes from principle. One of the foremen who had laughed earlier stepped forward, guilt written across his face. Mr. Carter, I was part of it. I did not stop Daniel when I should have. Jamal regarded him for a long moment. Then start now. Every person who ignored what happened here will attend a full-day ethics retraining next week. That is not punishment. It is a second chance. The man nodded slowly. Jamal's gaze swept the room again. We will rebuild this site, but this time the foundation will not just hold weight, it will hold accountability. Outside, the sound of hammering resumed, steady and rhythmic, as if the building itself understood. Lily exhaled, whispering, "They will never forget this day." Jamal replied, "Good, because neither will I." He turned toward the window, the skyline reflecting in the glass like a promise. The storm had passed, but its lesson was just beginning. By early afternoon, the energy inside the building had shifted completely. Where shame had once filled the air, purpose now took its place. Jamal stood near the center of the floor, surrounded by workers, compliance officers, and supervisors who had gathered for what felt less like a meeting and more like a reckoning. Sunlight poured through the wide glass panels, streaking across the steel beams like judgment and renewal in the same breath. Lily handed Jamal a new report. "We have traced the underpayment chain," she said. It led back to Daniel's department and 2 accounting managers who signed off on false expense reports. Jamal nodded slowly, his voice calm but deliberate. "Their names?" Lily replied. "Rebecca Hines and Thomas Lowell." Jamal turned to Davis. "Suspend their credentials. Effective immediately. I will review their files myself." Davis confirmed the order with a quiet, "Yes, sir." As the compliance team dispersed to carry out the directive, Jamal turned toward the gathered crew. "This is what happens when corruption is allowed to hide behind paperwork. It disguises injustice as process." He paused, letting the truth settle. "But this company was not built on silence. It was built on integrity. My father's name and mine will not stand beside deceit." The workers exchanged looks, nodding faintly, many of them seeing leadership for the first time instead of fear. From the far corner, Marcus raised his voice. "Mr. Carter, what about the safety reports?" They were ignored too. Jamal met his gaze. "We will address those next." He walked to a large whiteboard and uncapped a marker. "From today, any safety concern raised by a worker will trigger an automatic review from the executive office. No middle management interference, no delays." The room erupted in murmurs of relief. Lily's eyes softened as she watched the moment unfold. She whispered to herself, "This is what leadership looks like." Jamal heard her but said nothing. Instead, he wrote 3 words on the board in thick black letters: asterisk respect, accountability, equality, asterisk. "These are not slogans," he said, his tone clear. "They are conditions for keeping your job." He turned back to the team. "We will rebuild trust here, but not by pretending nothing happened. We will rebuild it by remembering why it did." Just then, the elevator opened again. A tall, gray-haired man in a charcoal suit stepped out, William Carter himself. The room fell into stunned silence. Every head turned. Jamal's father walked forward, slow and deliberate, his presence commanding but warm. He looked at his son for a long moment, then at the workers. "I did not come here as the owner," he said, his deep voice steady. "I came as a father to see the man my son has become." Jamal inclined his head respectfully. "We still have work to do." William smiled faintly. "Then let us do it together." He turned to the crowd. "This company bears my name, but it belongs to every person who builds it. Today you witnessed why we cannot afford arrogance. A company without humility collapses, no matter how tall it stands." The workers listened in complete silence, some with tears forming quietly. Jamal added, "And when it does stand tall, let it be because every hand was seen, not just counted." William placed a firm hand on his son's shoulder. "Well said, Jamal. Begin the reforms immediately. Whatever resources you need, you have them." Jamal nodded once. "Then we start now." The father and son stood side by side, a living contrast between legacy and future, both forged in the same moment of justice. Outside, the sounds of machinery rose again, not as noise but as rhythm. For the first time all day, the building felt alive. The afternoon light stretched long shadows across the construction site as the reform meeting continued. The atmosphere had changed from tension to a collective calm, the kind that follows a storm when the air feels washed clean. William Carter stood beside his son, both of them facing a room filled with employees who now understood what leadership truly looked like. Jamal addressed the group with the same quiet authority that had defined him since morning. "From this moment forward," he began, "our company will not measure success by profit margins alone, but by how we treat the people who build them. If respect is absent, then progress is an illusion. His words carried through the space like a steady current. Davis, the compliance officer, raised his tablet. Mr. Carter, we have restored access to the accounts of the wrongfully terminated workers and initiated reimbursement for unpaid wages. Legal has confirmed the process is complete. Jamal nodded. Good. Transparency must not be an event, it must be a habit. William looked at his son with quiet pride, then addressed the employees himself. For years, we focused on innovation and expansion. But what is innovation worth if the people at the foundation feel invisible? I built this company from the ground up after being told I did not belong in the industry. Now I see the same bias has crept into our own halls. That ends today. His voice deepened with conviction. We are not just building towers, we are rebuilding trust. The room erupted in soft applause, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that carries relief. Jamal turned to Lily, who had been watching intently. Lily, I want you to lead our new ethics liaison division. Your integrity under pressure proves you belong in leadership. Her eyes widened. Me? I am just an intern. Jamal smiled faintly. Not anymore. William added, courage is the rarest qualification. You showed it when it mattered most. Tears welled in Lily's eyes as the workers clapped for her. Thank you, sir. I will not let you down. Jamal responded. Do not thank me. Just lead the way, others will follow. In the corner, Marcus stood silently, hands still rough with years of labor, eyes glistening. Mr. Carter, he said softly, I have worked in this industry 30 years and I have never seen a day like this. Jamal looked at him. Then make sure there are more. Marcus smiled, the kind of smile that comes from being seen after decades of invisibility. William gestured to the compliance team. Prepare a full internal report for release. The public will know how we handled this not through rumor but through record. Let them see that accountability is not a threat, it is a standard. Davis confirmed. Yes, sir. I will prepare the documentation. The hum of machinery outside grew louder, echoing through the glass and steel like a heartbeat returning to life. Jamal looked around the room one last time. Every company has blueprints, he said. Most are for buildings. Ours will be for behavior. The employees nodded, their faces reflecting both humility and hope. William placed a hand on his son's shoulder once more. You have turned a scandal into a standard. I could not have done better myself. Jamal replied quietly. You did, father. You built the example. I just enforced it. William smiled, pride softening his expression. Then let us keep enforcing it together. As they stood before the company's workforce, father and son united by principle rather than title, the world outside continued its rhythm. But inside that building, something far more important had been constructed, not of concrete or steel, but of conscience. By late afternoon, the building buzzed with a new kind of energy, focused, purposeful, and alive. The once hostile office now felt like the heart of a movement. The workers, still in their vests and hard hats, gathered near the central lounge where Jamal and William Carter stood overseeing the first wave of reforms. Digital displays that once projected blueprints now showed company policies rewritten in real time, new ethics standards, equality mandates, and accountability procedures. Lily, still overwhelmed by her promotion, coordinated with Davis on the compliance updates. She worked with steady confidence, her earlier hesitation replaced by determination. Jamal observed her for a moment and smiled slightly. That is what leadership looks like, he said softly. William nodded beside him. You gave her a chance. That is the difference between power and purpose. The sound of approaching footsteps drew their attention. A security guard entered, holding an envelope. Mr. Carter, he said, this just arrived by courier. It is marked urgent. Jamal took the envelope, slid it open, and unfolded the document inside. His expression tightened as he read. William noticed. What is it? Jamal replied slowly. It is a letter from the board of investors. They want a full explanation for the site's shutdown and an emergency conference call within the hour. William crossed his arms. Of course they do. Money trembles when integrity takes the microphone. Jamal glanced at the workers still gathered nearby. Then let them listen to the truth. He handed the letter to Davis. Prepare the call. No PR filters, no edits. They will hear everything as it happened. Davis nodded firmly. Understood. 30 minutes later, the main conference room filled again, this time with a large monitor displaying the faces of board members across multiple time zones. One of them, a gray-haired man with an expensive suit and colder tone, began the questioning. Mr. Carter, the board appreciates transparency. but halting production on one of our most lucrative projects without consultation raises concern. Was this really necessary? Jamal looked directly into the camera. Yes, because this project was being built on silence and discrimination, and I will not let that foundation stand under my family's name. Another board member leaned forward. You are jeopardizing millions in revenue, William interrupted calmly. Then we will rebuild it the right way, even if it costs us. The price of injustice is always higher than the cost of repair. A third voice chimed in, quieter but more thoughtful. I have reviewed the compliance footage. The decision was justified. This was more than misconduct, it was systemic. Jamal nodded once. Exactly. We are not punishing a few people. We are resetting a culture. The screen fell quiet. Then, one by one, the board members began to nod. The gray-haired man finally exhaled. You have the board's support, Mr. Carter. Proceed with the reforms, just keep us informed. Jamal's voice remained steady. You will not just be informed, you will be involved. The call ended. William turned to his son. That was bold, Jamal replied. It had to be. He looked toward the window, watching the sunset spill across the skyline like gold after a storm. This company was built to change landscapes. Now it is time we change hearts, too. William smiled proudly. You sound like me 20 years ago. Jamal smirked slightly. Maybe, but I plan to sound louder. Laughter rippled through the room. Even the workers nearby smiled, their fatigue replaced by hope. As the last rays of light touched the steel frame of the new building outside, Jamal's reflection stared back from the glass, not the worker they once mocked, but the leader they now followed. Justice, rebuilt from the ground up, finally had a roof. The evening air hung heavy with the scent of steel and dust as the sun dipped below the skyline. Inside the main conference floor, the sound of quiet typing and low conversation filled the space where fear had once lived. The reforms were underway, and every desk glowed with renewed purpose. Jamal Carter stood near the wide glass wall, looking out at the half-finished structure his team had turned from a symbol of shame into one of accountability. His reflection stared back at him, still wearing the same work boots from that morning, now streaked with dirt and resolve. Behind him, Lily approached with a tablet. Mr. Carter, she said softly, the statement is ready for release. I thought you might want to review it before it goes public. Jamal turned and nodded. Read it. Lily cleared her throat. Effective immediately, Carter Construction Group announces a new policy of total transparency. Every site, every manager, and every worker will operate under equal standards of respect, safety, and dignity. Any employee found violating these standards will be removed regardless of title. Leadership begins with accountability. Jamal listened, then said quietly, Add one more line. Lily waited. What should it say? Jamal looked toward the horizon. Add, this company will never confuse silence with professionalism again. Lily smiled faintly, typing it in. It is done. William Carter entered the room, his tie loosened, but his posture still regal. That is quite a statement, he said. You are setting a precedent, Jamal replied. Good. If we do not lead by example, then we lead by excuse. And that ends here. William stepped closer. You handled today with precision and grace. I expected strength, but you showed something greater patience. Jamal met his father's eyes. You taught me that real authority is not proven in moments of power, but in how you respond when you have every reason to lose control. William smiled, pride softening his tone. Then you understood the lesson better than I ever did. Before either could speak again, Davis entered carrying a folder. Mr. Carter, he said, there is something you should see. The corporate media division has already received footage from this morning. It is spreading fast. He handed the folder to Jamal. Inside were screenshots from news outlets and social media posts, clips of Daniel's outburst, the water, and Jamal's quiet response. The headlines read, *CEO's son humiliated at own company responds without anger, reforms entire division. Another said, *from worker to leader, the silent power of Jamal Carter. Jamal exhaled slowly. So the world is watching. William replied, Let them. What they see is not scandal, it is change. Lily added softly, People are already commenting. Some are inspired. Others are furious. But everyone is talking. Jamal placed the folder on the table. Then let us make sure they are talking about what matters. He turned to Davis. Release the full footage. Every second. No editing, no narration. Let them see everything, especially the silence. Davis hesitated. You want to show the humiliation too? Jamal nodded. Yes, because the lesson is not in how I looked. It is in how I stood. The room fell quiet. William's eyes glistened with restrained emotion. "You have done more today than most men do in a lifetime," he said. Jamal shook his head. "No, father. I just reminded people that respect is not a privilege, it is a requirement." Outside, the city lights began to flicker on one by one, glowing across the skyline like distant applause. Inside, Jamal Carter stood tall, not as a victim, not as a boss, but as a man who turned humiliation into history. The next morning arrived not with noise, but with clarity. The sun climbed over the city, spilling gold across the steel frame of the new headquarters, now standing as both a monument and a message. Inside, the staff gathered once more, no longer under the weight of fear, but under the promise of change. Jamal Carter entered the main floor dressed in the same work jacket he had worn the day before, not as a symbol of rebellion, but as a reminder of where it all began. Conversations hushed when they saw him, yet this time the silence was not awkward, it was respect. Lily stood by the glass doors holding a stack of freshly printed contracts, the new equity agreements, signed and sealed overnight. "Mr. Carter," she said, handing them over, "every department head has acknowledged the new code of conduct. They know it is not optional." Jamal took the papers, scanning them briefly. "Good. Then today we rebuild with honesty." William Carter entered behind him, greeting the employees with a quiet nod. "Yesterday was a test," he said, his deep voice carrying warmth and gravity. "And you passed. But understand this redemption is not a single day's work. It is a daily choice." The workers nodded, the lesson sinking in deeper than any policy could. Jamal walked toward the same spot where Daniel Moore had humiliated him just 24 hours earlier. The floor had been cleaned, the puddle gone, yet the memory lingered like a shadow. He turned to face everyone. "This is where it happened," he said. "Where arrogance tried to define me and where silence tried to erase me. But it failed because silence only wins when we allow it to." The room was still, every pair of eyes fixed on him. "What happened here will not be forgotten," Jamal continued. "Not because it was painful, but because it was necessary. This company needed to see itself clearly before it could grow." He paused, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "We cannot control how the world sees us, but we can control how we stand when the world looks." William watched his son speak with pride that words could not contain. When Jamal finished, he stepped forward and addressed the group. "My son reminded this company of its soul, and from today forward, that soul belongs to every one of you. Remember that dignity does not come from the color of your skin, the title on your badge, or the size of your paycheck. It comes from the truth you choose to protect." Lily wiped away a tear. Marcus, the veteran worker, raised his hand. "Mr. Carter," he said, voice trembling slightly, "what do we call what happened here?" Jamal looked at him and replied, "We call it accountability." The word hung in the air like an oath. The workers began to clap, slow, deliberate, building into a rhythm that filled the entire room. It was not celebration. It was recognition. Jamal looked around one last time. The walls that had once witnessed prejudice now stood as witnesses to change. He turned to Lily. "Send the public statement," he said. She nodded and tapped her screen. Within seconds, the message reached every outlet. Carter construction reforms after internal scandal, led by CEO's son, justice prevails. Outside, camera crews began to gather, unaware that the real story had already been written long before the headlines. Jamal turned to his father. "We built structures that touched the sky," he said quietly, "but this time, we built something that touches people." William placed a hand on his shoulder. "And that will outlast anything made of steel." As the two men stood together watching the sunrise pour through the glass, the building gleamed with new light. It was not just a company anymore, it was a legacy reborn, proof that even in the face of humiliation, truth still builds higher than pride. And in that moment, for the first time, every person in the room stood a little taller.